this is a honeymoon period that's going into its second week for Kamala Harris. The Republican conference and Donald Trump don't have a good narrative to push back on her with yet.
Right.
The Democratic Party is just sort of running in happiness right now with Kamala Harris.
What is the strategy structure you see of a Trump campaign? If I have George Bush Sr. or name another Republican, I get in my mind that there's a hierarchy of advisors. Does President Trump have a hierarchy of advisors as he finds a new strategy?
Well, it's interesting because the hierarchy of advisors is not focusing on the things that a George Bush administration would. You know, we should be talking about foreign policy, on tax policy. There's a $4.6 trillion tax bill that's going to be written next year, and none of that is anywhere. They're more trying to come up with a good tagline to define Kamala Harris. Even the immigration talking points aren't landing because so many of the reductions that have come in the last 6 to 7 months since February on the border in terms of deportation, in terms of the diplomacy that's happened with foreign nations at the Mexico border to keep migrants from entering the United States has dropped to levels that don't have the same tagline they did over the last 3 years. You know, the Biden-Kamala administration has gotten immigration at the southern border below the starting point of the Biden term. So I think a lot of their talking points on policy are not landing, and they're in offensive mode or defensive mode, on their pick of vice president, on Project 2025, et cetera.
Henrietta, you mentioned the vice presidential pick here. What's the latest on who it might be and when we might hear about a VP pick?
I think that Democrats are going to strategically try to draw this out as long as possible, as long as the palace intrigue is on who will she pick or who won't she pick. We're not talking about any of the policy prescriptions that Kamala Harris herself might have, her past support for different tax policies and things along those lines. As long as we're doing this palace intrigue stuff, it's a positive news cycle for the Democratic Party. So I expect that we won't hear the vice presidential ticket announced until next week. August 7th is when we should be finalized in determining that Kamala Harris will be the nominee. And so I think somewhere in early next week, that'll start to emerge. My money's on Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. I think the plus 24-point boost that Harris has identified with Hispanic voters is what is responsible for opening up the electoral map to states like Nevada and Arizona. And then the plus 25 with Black voters opens up Georgia and North Carolina. So I would expect a more southerly focus than Shapiro in Pennsylvania.